let me just introduce you to this case.
Okay.
So basically, our client is a private equity fund considering the acquisition of Big Yellow Bus Co., which is one of the leading manufacturers of school buses in the US. The client has engaged our company to help determine whether or not to proceed with this investment. So what would be your approach to analyzing this question?
Okay, sure. So just to repeat what I've just heard to ensure I hear everything correctly. So our client is a private equity firm. So we want to buy a school bus manufacturer for the US.
Yes.
Yes. So I think I just want to clarify a few simple questions. So firstly, what this school bus is for? Is it for primary school or middle school or like what kind of school buses?
I think it's just generally like the school, like the big school buses. So like I don't think there's much difference whether it's for primary school or like high school.
Oh, okay. So it's just general school buses. So is there anything like for the US means that according to the entire US?
So the entire US market. That's the other leading manufacturer in the US market.
Okay. So do we have any specific aim of our client?
So as you know, usually when your client is a private equity, what they do is they buy a company, try to grow it, and then try to sell it in the end. So basically, when that happens, you kind of want this company that you're trying to buy, you kind of want to see whether you are able to grow its value and then eventually sell it.
Oh yeah, I understand. So just to check, they don't have any specific aim like time frame or whatsoever.
They don't have like a very specific time frame, but normally a private equity won't want a company to be in their hands for 10 years before they're able to sell it, right?
10 years, I see.
As in like they won't want it to be too long before they are able to resell the company, right?
Yeah, understand. So just a short time frame, I guess. I get it. So just take a couple of minutes to structure my thoughts.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I have finished the structuring. So I think basically my structure comprises three parts. The first is about this industry overall, this industry attractiveness, and secondly is about our company's attractiveness, specifically for this particular manufacturer, and lastly is about our some concerns about our private equity firm in terms of the feasibility to sell it later after acquiring this firm. So maybe firstly we can talk about this industry attractiveness. So firstly we investigate its market size, market growth, and it would be better if we get the profitability across this industry, and secondly, some competitive landscape of this particular industry. So is this industry fragmented or concentrated, and is there any particularly threats that our other competitors are trying to do? Like, what are some key qualities and things that our competitors are providing? And lastly is about our customers. So I assume that in this case, our customer might be either the government or the schools in the US. So I'm not entirely sure like how is the preferences and what is the proportion of like different customers. So then we move on to the second part, which is our company attractiveness. So firstly, it would be great that if we can know that what is our current profitability of this company, and then what is our market share of this manufacturer, and lastly is what are some key strengths and capability of this particularly manufacturer, and do they meet the needs of the customers, and do they match the competitions with other competitors? So lastly is about the feasibility and profitable exit, considering our client is a private equity firm. So probably we can consider whether this particularly manufacturer has any other synergies with other firm our private equity firm has already held, so that we can actually leverage these advantages. And do we have the existence of the strategic buyers within the industry or within other financial buyers that it is possible for them to buy this firm a few years later? So yeah, I think that's all of my structures. So probably we can start it from the industry attractiveness. Like, for example, we can start from this entire market size and growth.
Yes, that's very good. So I really like your structure. The feasibility part, I think that will not be this focus of the case. So let's focus on the market and the industry and the company. So that's the first question I have for you. Exactly. Let's try to size the market for school buses in the US.
Okay, sure. So can we like assume that the market, the school buses is for like for primary schools and high schools, middle schools and high schools? Is that?
Yeah, so we can kind of assume that people under the age of 15, so primary and middle school.
Okay, under age of 15. So not quite sure about the usage of the school bus in the US. So do all of the schools use the school buses, or just a proportion of them?
I feel like the school bus, so normally the school bus is not like it's not necessary, it's not mandatory for every child to take the school bus.
I see.
Yes, so you have to like estimate a proportion about that.
Okay, so we can assume a proportion of that.
Yes,
I see. So okay. So I think my structure would be, first we started from the total population of the US. Then we estimate the age from maybe 6 to 15. That's the proportion of the students potentially take the school buses. And then we further estimate a proportion of this population who are likely to use the school buses, since not all of them would take school buses. And then we assume the number of the students on one school buses. So we estimate maybe the total number of the school buses required in the US. And then we probably estimated based on like say the the lifetime of one school buses. So we estimate the replacement of school buses within a year, and probably plus an additional percentage of the new school buses any new school establishment wants to buy. So that is the number of the school buses we get per year.
What do you mean by the new school buses?
So we get let's say the lifetime of one school buses. That is a replacement rate of the school buses. So but potentially some schools will buy new school buses that is not within the replacement rate.
Oh, right. Okay, so for the simplicity, that's like a very good consideration. But for simplicity, let's just assume that there are no new schools being set up, and like the schools have a fixed number of buses that they are using, and that's all right for them.
Okay, great. So after we take count into the replacement, that's the total quantity of the school buses going to be purchased every year. Then we just times the price of the school buses per year.
Yes, good, right. Very good. Yes. Okay. So let's estimate this in terms of the number of buses sold, so you don't have to worry about the price.
Okay, so just estimate the number of the buses. So let's start from the total population in the US. So what is the total population?
320 million.
320 million. Okay, so for the students aged 6 to 15, I guess it's about 9. About 10%. Do you think that's sensible price, sensible range?
Why do you think it's 10%?
Okay, so I think I assume the US has the similar population pyramid like the UK, so which is from people who aged from 0 to 20, that occupies about around 20% of the entire populations. And then for the people who age 6 to 12, we assume that the population is evenly proportioned in that case. From 16 to 12, 16 to 15 is about 9 to 10%. So here, for simplicity, we just assume it's about 10%.
Okay, very good. We can do that.
Okay, so we just assume that's 10%. And then we further assume a proportion of the students who take the school buses. So, so I assume that's maybe mostly public schools and a small portion of the private schools students who take the buses, because the schools could be far away from the neighborhood that students are resided in.
Very good, very good. So from our research, that's actually about 30% of people taking the school bus.
Okay, so 30% of them take the school buses. And then we estimate like the number of the students on a bus. So I just estimated based on the size of a normal bus. So I think we have maybe 4 person a row, and we get about around 10 rows. So I guess it's about 40 students per bus. Is that okay?
So based on our research, it's actually 50. So why don't we just use 50?
Okay, right. About 200,000. 200,000. And then maybe we get what is the lifetime of a school bus?
That's about 10 years.
Okay, 10 years. So we divided this number by 10. That's the number of the buses purchased per year. So that's about 20,000 buses are purchased per year. Is that right?
Sorry, again. So what is the number of students taking buses?
320 million times 10% is 32 million, and 32 million times 30%, that's about 9.6 million.
Yes.
So we round it up a bit to assume that it's about 10 million.
Yes.
So use 10 million to divide it by 50 students. That is 0.2 million, which is 200,000. Mm-hmm. And 200,000 divided by 10 is 20,000 buses.
Yes, very good. That's very good.
So I think this number is quite significant per year. So I think that would I would assume that this market size would be rather significant, but might not be so if we divide it by, let's say, into different states or whatsoever. So maybe we can move on to discuss its market growth.
So, well, we don't have to actually worry about this, like the different states, because we the big yellow bus, they sort of operate nationwide. So their buses are sold everywhere. Okay, so our next goal is actually to let's analyze the competitive landscape of the US bus market. Okay. So I'm going to show you an exhibit. If you look at your WeChat.
Yeah, I saw it. So maybe I just take a few minutes to look at this exhibit. So market share by units is the number of the buses. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, so firstly, maybe we look at the market share analysis. So it seems that our big yellow bus company is the dominant player in that industry, although it doesn't exist a second and third player by very much. It is a very concentrated market.
Yes.
It seems that our market share by units is the second largest. So it's like lower than our competitor A, but because our market share by dollars is existent, I would assume that we sell, let's say, less number of the buses, but we actually sell rather expensive buses. So I think that maybe account for the difference by this market share by dollars and market share by units. So maybe we move on to this margin analysis. So obviously, a big yellow bus company has the lowest gross margin and operating margin than competitor A and competitor B. The gross margin is almost 10% lower. So I think there might be some problems in a big yellow bus company. So maybe we can further investigate why that is the case.
Okay, so we know that the operating their profit margin is lower. Can you sort of do some brainstorm and think of why that might be the case?
Okay.
If we focus on the gross margin.
You mean why operating margin is lower? Or
gross margin.
Why gross margin is lower?
Yeah.
So, gross margin is the profits before the tax and interest, right? So that is the.
So the gross margin is the revenue minus the cost of goods sold over revenue. That's
yes,
the gross
right.
margin.
So the operating margin is the so operating margin just does not count for, let's say, the fixed costs. Is that right?
So operating margin is the ratio between the operating income and the revenue.
Operating income and revenue. Okay. So I feel that since our operating margin is also 10% lower, the reason behind this lower margin might be a lower lower operating income than our competitors. So probably we can first focus on why operating income is let's say the operating profit over the cost is lower than other competitors. So potential reason could be a higher operating cost for selling one particular unit of the buses. So I think a potential reason for that cost might be firstly manufacturing cost. So it's a manufacturing process mainly involves, let's say, a laboring cost. And then maybe we also have this higher procurement cost, and that includes maybe higher costs of the raw materials. And I mean, that depends on our negotiation with the suppliers. And potentially we also have this higher cost of delivering our buses to the particular schools. So not entirely sure how our manufacturing is. How our manufacturer delivering is. Do we have let's say, warehouses in certain places, and then you deliver the buses to different schools? So that can maybe accounts for higher delivery costs. So I guess that is the reason for the cost part.
Yes, cool. So we actually did do some research around this area, and the results we found was that firstly, the big yellow bus, they did have a lot of like material and labor costs higher than the competitors. And and also because the competitors they were owned by large industrial trucking firms, so there were overlaps of like engine and those kind of technologies overlap. So that's why they were able to reduce costs around that part. Yeah, very good. Overall, very good case performance. So let's move on to the recommendation. Now you're meeting the client, and what would you tell the client?
Okay, so so overall, I'm tasked to decide whether we should our clients should purchase big yellow what is that? Big Yellow School Bus Company, which is a manufacturer of a school bus for the US. So our recommendation is that yes, we should buy this company for two reasons. The first is that the market size is rather significant. We assume that there is about 20,000 buses being purchased every year, and since that we have a dominant position in the market, I would assume that in the following years we would continue to dominate this market and gain significant proportion and revenue in that regard. And secondly is that we identify a potential reason for improvement in the profit margin. So right now our profits margin is 10% lower than our competitors, and we found out that we can improve this by maybe negotiating with our suppliers and potentially improve this synergies with our suppliers and the manufacturer of the school buses. So potentially we can actually find a way to mitigate this lower margin in our manufacturers. So that I would assume that we can solve these problems in the following years and to improve the margin to the level that can compete with our other competitors. So I think the next steps I would suggest us to do is to do maybe an industrial research and to maybe interview and with a senior level management within that manufacturer, so that we can see and further assess the possibility to whether we can improve this margin and identify other profitable opportunities in the future.
Yeah, I think in general, very good. We did relatively. This case is that it's not very long and it's not very complicated, so it's like kind of like a first round. Okay. Thing. My first round interview was like 25 minutes.
Okay, I see.
So it's around there. I think you did very good on your structure. It was very crystal clear, and your presentation of like pyramid communication was very good. On market sizing, your structure was again very good because you were talking about we should do 1, 2, 3. Like you were firstly talking me through like the different numbers you were gonna calculate, and then you went on to calculate that. It would be better if you were updating me with a number, because you were like 320 million for the population, then 10% of people taking the bus, then 10% of people in the school age, and then 30% taking the bus. But like you weren't sort of telling me after 320 million, then there are 32 million people who are school children. So like it was better to update those numbers. Then it's like it would be much easier to follow. Yes, I feel like your assumption of 10% for the population, your reasoning was very good. But you could have explained the reasoning upfront. So like when you are making an assumption, you should justify your assumption.
Yes.
Because you did have a very good reason, and you shouldn't let that slip. Yes. And the last part on the prompt, very good. You picked up on the price difference and also sort of the margin difference. I feel like and like your brainstorming for that was also good. And also, what is like an operating margin?
I think that is something I am unsure about. So I think I'm supposed to talk about how to improve the operating margin, but I'm not quite sure does this tell me actually there is a cost problem rather than revenue problem. So I think I didn't make
it is a cost I think it is a cost problem. Because their prices are actually higher. And like I just feel like because operating margin and gross margin are not terms that we as non-economic students should know. So like I feel like it's good to just ask interviewer to clarify like what is an operating margin, what is an operating income. It would be better to sort of clarify on the spot.
Okay.
That sort of gives you more confidence as well when you are talking about this term, and you can get more straight to the point when you are trying to analyze it. So, and the recommendation, I don't know if you should recommend proceeding with it, because they do have a large market share, but they also have a higher price. And like you don't quite know about like the quality of their, like whether that price is justified, and you don't quite know about the trend of like whether their market share is going up or going down. Because like if their market share is going up in spite of their high price, then you can infer like, oh, maybe they have a competitive edge somewhere. And like in contrast, if their market share is going down, then you can sort of imply that that's like they are losing competitiveness. So like I feel like that's where you can talk like that's what can factor into your next step. And I just feel like in general, the whatever you have now, because like those are like decisions that you have to make later, but like based on what you have now, because they have a cost, their profit margin is low, and their like market share is not like very, very good. So I feel like it's not too safe to acquire this company.
I see. So I think I probably didn't quite sure about this. You mentioned about this delivering cost and manufacturing cost is high for this company. So I guess we probably need to investigate whether we can improve that in that regard.
Yeah. So like a very good way to sort of reduce its high cost of production is if this PE company owns some other company that sort of has some synergy or like technical overlap with it, then they can use that technology to improve this one. But like we are not talking about like sort of this case, haven't talked about it yet, so you can't like make assumptions. That could be something that should be something in your next step, which I think you included. So that's like a good one. But like I just feel like what you have in hand is like, so I feel like the conclusion is like my conclusion based on the information that I've already got, and then this decision, of course, it can be reversed giving your next steps of analysis. So that's where you can talk about, if given more time, we would like to examine blah blah blah, and that might instead enable us to favor the acquisition instead of not acquiring it.
I see.
Yeah, so I think that's it. But generally,
so you would recommend we do not buy it for now?
Yeah, the casebook also says don't buy it, but I think I would agree with the casebook. I think it's not very favorable.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for the case.